Hon, who we will hear from in a moment, and we'll also have the opportunity to listen to a message from the ULMWP Chair, Resmi, and to hear from the Chair of the International Parliamentarians for West Papua, and that's Alex Abel MP. Then we'll have the opportunity to ask some questions of our welcome guests. I'm proud signatory of the West Papua Declaration, which recognises the inalienable right of the Indigenous people of West Papua to self-determination, along with over 100 current and previous parliamentarians from across the world. The plight of the peoples of West Papua is one that we should not and cannot ignore. Now, the most recent Brussels declaration urges the Indonesian government to facilitate a visit to West Papua by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, and that's something that we're going to be pushing very strongly from here. And it states that West Papua is in the grip of significant humanitarian crisis, which requires urgent international attention. The beautiful lands of West Papua lie in the western half of the island of New Guinea, bordering the independent nation of Papua New Guinea, and it's home to over 250 diverse tribes, all speaking their own unique languages and having unique cultures. Since 1962, the country has suffered under a brutal Indonesian military occupation, which, unbelievable, has seen over 500,000 Papuans killed. And despite a brief period of hope after the death of the former Indonesian military dictator, General Suharto, in 1998, the suffering and killings have continued to this day. Finally, with the incoming Indonesian President General Prabowo Subianto and an unrepentant war of criminal complicity and genocide in East Timor, there is a very real fear that things will deteriorate even further. Therefore, today's meeting is more timely and more urgent than ever for us all to send out a clear message from this Parliament and from Parliaments all around the world that enough is more than enough, and that the voice of the West Papuan people must be heard. With that, I would like to welcome the ULMWP President Wenda to speak and give us an update. Thank you very much. Benny.
Firstly, thank you. My language for Firstly, I would like to thank you, Bill Kidd, for hosting this launching event. Your hospitality and appreciation by the West Papuan people standing behind us in our struggle for self-determination will not be forgotten when we are free. As I speak to you now, West Papua are living under the saddle. We are scared of the future under new Indonesian president, the war criminal Prabowo Subianto. For free West Papua, this means that ghost of the dictator Suharto is back. Prabowo has never been held accountable or punished for his atrocity in East Timor and West Papua. He has committed massacre and never apologized. In his campaign, he said that he will pursue a military approach in West Papua. We know that the situation will only get worse this road. West Papua needs short-term friends and long-term friends. We hope that Scottish Parliament can join the International Parliamentarian for West Papua and add their voice to the growing cry for a UN human rights visit to West Papua. We have been isolated and voiced for a long time, and we need support to speak for us, just like the Basque Country and Catalan Parliament, and we hope that Scottish Parliament can make their own call for UN visit to West Papua. We last held a meeting in Scottish Parliament in 2010, and I also came to Glasgow in 2014 to witness the independent referendum, even though there were stronger differences between Scottish people and the referendum was signing the example of two democracy and self-determination. There was no violence. No one was forced to vote one way. No one was threatened. I saw this referendum as a beacon of hope that my people are fighting for. The Indonesia claimed that West Papua has let go of its sovereignty in 1969, which act of free choice, what Papuans call act of no choice. This is a lie. The act of no choice was fraud. Indonesia handpicked 1,026 West Papuans and forced them to vote against independence on behalf of over 800,000. They were threatened with death, with having their tongue cut out and dropped from the helicopter onto their villages if they refused. Even UN officials who oversaw the act of no choice said it was whitewash. West Papua has never exercised its right to self-determination. Instead, we suffer 60 years military occupation. Since then, over 500,000 West Papuans have been killed. This is the hidden genocide. West Papua also needs friends because Indonesia has closed our land to outside world. For 6 years, journalists have been barred from the scene. What is really happening in West Papua? Their own eyes. The BBC, France 24, ABC, they are all banned. Indonesia all banned the NGO, just like North Korea. Aid worker from assisting West Papuans. But most crazy of all is that Indonesians banned the UN while sitting on the UN Human Rights Council. It has been 6 years since Indonesia first invited the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights to visit West Papua. More than 100 countries have demanded the UN visit, including Pacific Island Forum and Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, the European Commissions, but Indonesia continued to refuse. Since then, over 100,000 people have been displaced from their home. They are refugees in their own land. Over 75,000 West Papua remain displaced this day in a place called Intan Jaya, Puncak Jaya, Duga, Maibarat, and Oksibil. They are living in the bush without adequate supply for water, food, and medicine. In West Papua, the two crimes, genocide and ecocide, just like Indonesia killed us, they also kill our forests, poison our rivers, destroy our mountains. Indonesia already operates the Freeport mine, the biggest gold mine in the entire world. This means this mine has destroyed the ancestral lands of Amome people and poisons the Aika River. Now, huge new gold mine size of Jakarta is being built, called Wabu Block. Since 2018, BP has also expanded the Tangguh gas field. One gas field in West Papua will now provide 35% of Indonesia gas. This is modern day of colonialism in actions. West Papua ready to govern its own affairs. Through the ULMWP, we have our own governance structure. We have our constitution, our cabinet, and our 7 regional executives. We have held our first Congress last year where the people decide their own leaders. We also have a Green State vision for independent West Papua, free from Indonesia genocidal and development. The Green State vision is our promise to the world that West Papua rainforest is the lung of the world, the third largest rainforest on the earth after Amazon, the Congo. We need to protect it. Without our rainforest in West Papua, you cannot fight climate change in Scotland or anywhere else in the world. Thank you again for hosting me and for support West Papua. Please stand behind, support UN High Commissioner visit. You can be a voice of the voiceless people in West Papua. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Benny. So what we now have is ULMWP Prime Minister Edison Baromi via a pre-recorded video. Is that available?
Yes.
Perkenalkan, nama saya Edison Baromi, Perdana Menteri Bersama oleh selaku Parlementary West Papua Bersama hendak menyampaikan current situation atau situasi terkini West Papua Bersama Kabinet dan mewakili tujuh pimpinan. Hari ini kunjungan Komisi Pemilihan PBB belum diizinkan sampai hari ini. Dan juga selaku PM mau menyampaikan lebih kurang 500.000 rakyat West Papua, laki, perempuan, anak telah dibunuh. Dan situasi West Papua hari ini lebih dari 25.000 pasukan organik yang sedang beroperasi di West Papua. Dan ini Papua benar-benar hari dalam darurat kemanusiaan. West Papua situasi terkini benar-benar dalam darurat kemanusiaan. Hari ini ada state crime atau kejahatan negara, illegal mine, illegal fishing, illegal logging yang sedang sistematis terstruktur sedang berlangsung di West Papua. Oleh karena itu, pada kesempatan ini, selaku PM Prosel Government mendesak perlunya segera kunjungan Komisi Pemilihan PBB West Papua untuk melakukan investigasi langsung terhadap berbagai pelanggaran HAM. PM Prosel Government dan seluruh rakyat West Papua dari 7 wilayah adat. Tadi saya dari wilayah Amin menyatakan we support the Scottish Friends of West Papua laws yang sedang berlangsung saat ini. Sekali lagi, we support the Scottish Friends of West Papua laws. Successful Scottish Friends of West Papua. Bapak Yahweh memberkati. Wah. Bapak Yahweh memberkati kita semua. Freedom.
Very strong and a message which we all need to stand with. Can I ask IPWP Chair Alex Sobel MP to give us some words, please?
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for hosting us today. So we have this important meeting to launch the Scottish Friends of West Papua. The International Parliamentarians of West Papua, which I chair, is a network of parliamentarians from around the world. The IPWP has individual chapters in Parliament, including the Westminster UK Parliament, the European Parliament, the Australian Parliament, New Zealand Parliament, and Spanish Parliament. We also have a network of vice chairs around the world. Recent IPWP work is focused on human rights in West Papua. As you heard from Benny, the human rights situation, and Edison in fact, is very poor. And no international mission has been there since the World Council of Churches in February 2019. The IPWP has been increasing international pressure for a visit, which is agreed by the UNHRC and Indonesia. But Indonesia has come up with different bureaucratic reasons why this hasn't gone ahead for nearly 6 years now. So we raised questions and motions from various encourages Indonesia to allow the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights to visit West Papua and has urged Indonesia to send special invitations to all special rapporteurs and mandate holders. This unequivocal statement of support for the visit made on behalf of the EU Commission as the growing number of individual states and regional bodies that have voiced concerns over human rights violations in West Papua and Indonesia's continued denial of access for a visit from the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. These include the Pacific Islands Forum, the Organisation of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, and both the UK and US missions to the United Nations Human Rights Council. We have seen actions in individual European parliaments as well. The landmark intervention in the Dutch Parliament calling for the UN HCR to visit West Papua, which was followed by comments made 2 years ago by the Dutch Foreign Affairs Minister Wopke Hoekstra, who stated that it is important to have such a visit by the High Commissioner as soon as possible. Support comments have also been made by the UK government, where successive government ministers over successive years have stated they support proposed visit of the UN Commissioner for Human Rights to Papua and encourage both sides to agree on date for a visit. I just tabled another question to the Foreign Office last month and they reiterated their support for a visit. The High Commissioner said that it still aims to secure access to West Papua, but the obstacles have been placed in its way by the Indonesian state. The High Commissioner officer put out strongly worded statements condemning human rights abuses in West Papua. On the 4th of July 2023, Alice Werumi Nenjatu, Under Secretary General and Special Advisor Secretary General on the Prevention of Genocide, stated, in Indonesia, the human rights situation in Papua remains deeply concerning. This includes alleged harassment, arbitrary arrests and detention of Papuans and non-recognition of the rights of Indonesian Papuans that has enabled the alleged appropriation of indigenous lands. Humanitarian assessment and assistance, as well as genuine inclusive dialogue to address underlying grievances, is encouraged. The International Parliament of West Papua held a major meeting in the UK Parliament on October the 18th, 2023, calling once again the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights to be urgently allowed to visit West Papua. The IPWP meeting was held to support the communication of the Melanesian Spearhead Group Leaders Summit in August 2023, urging Indonesia to facilitate UN visits to West Papua before the next Leaders Summit in 2024, which has now been gone. Indonesia promised to facilitate UN visit in 2018. 6 years on, they are no closer to allowing UN access. Over 85 countries have now called for the UN visit. These include all member states of the Pacific Island Forum, the Organisation of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, the European Commission and individual nations including the UK, Spain, the US and the Netherlands. At Indonesia's Universal Periodic Review 2 years ago in Geneva, 8 countries, including the US, Canada and Australia, expressed profound concern over the human rights situation in West Papua and urged international investigation. Last year, the 52nd session of the United Nations Human Rights Council, joint IPWP and International Lawyers West Papua delegation attended the session accredited by the UK government. Tim Hansen, the leader of the ILWP, and myself, as well as Stephanie Caligari of GLAM, held various meetings with special rapporteurs, their officers and country missions to UNHRC. And I follow this up by telling the recent 55th session of UNHRC, meeting more special rapporteurs. These include a meeting with Alexander Zantaki, Special Rapporteur in the field of cultural rights, with a subsequent follow-up meeting in London. Alexander found the evidence of significant deprivation of cultural rights compelling and requested a visit to Indonesia to witness these abuses herself. But to date, the request has not been accepted by Indonesia. The delegation also met with missions for the UK and US. We also met in London with Mary Lawler, Special Rapporteur for Human Rights Defenders, who was well versed in the dire situation of human rights defenders in Papua and has also been unable to secure a visit. I also met with Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Religion of Belief, Nazila Ghanea, who already knew of the work of the World Council Churches, was aware of West Papua, but very concerned by reporting the extrajudicial killing of clerics, and will be undertaking more work in West Papua. I met Nazila at both the 52nd and 55th session of the UNHRC. I also met Nicholas Lavray at the 55th session, who is a Special Rapporteur for minority rights. And just last week, I met Mr. Raja Gopal, Special Rapporteur for adequate housing. All of these Special Rapporteurs are committed to defending human rights in West Papua. The ILWP and IPW also met evidence when the opportunity arose that Special Rapporteurs and mandate holders gave appropriate calls for evidence, including the Universal Periodic Review of Indonesia, UNHRC. This year, we're prioritising engagement with Special Rapporteurs and mandate holders once more. This with the 6 Special Rapporteurs we already established a relationship with covers over half the UNHRC mandates, and all of these egregious human rights issues exist in West Papua, highlighting the need for a wide and broad visit to West Papua, which is now 6 years continue to seek a meeting with Volker Turk, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, and press on him and Indonesia the immediate need for a visit. There are currently 14 country mandate holders. In Brussels in January, the European Parliamentary West Papua meeting, I announced the IPWP's new call for the UNHRC to appoint a special rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Indonesia, with a particular focus on West Papua and other indigenous peoples. Indonesia escaped scrutiny needed on human rights, and working broadly as an approach has failed. We need a singular and unique focus on Indonesia, especially in light of change of President Jakarta this year. This is why we need a 15th country mandate holder to take on the lack of transparency and openness on the reported flagrant human rights abuses undertaken by the Indonesian regime. The UNMWP has declared on various occasions they are ready and waiting to welcome the High Commissioner, and this is what the new West Papuan people need from the international community. We heard it again today from Edison. As international scrutiny is intensifying, Indonesia is running out of excuses not to allow access to the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. I look to you in the Scottish Parliament for further support. I urge you to meet with the relevant bodies, whether in the UK or more broadly. And I ask today a couple of specific requests. To write to the UK Ambassador to the UN in Geneva to meet with Volker Turk and regarding the mission to West Papua, and also to invite you to an IPWP meeting in London later this year, where I want to invite all members of the Scottish Parliament to support West Papua to join me, and also a subsequent European meeting in Brussels, where we will again convene European Parliament, Terence West Papua, under the leadership of Carlos Puigdemont, an MEP. We also work with a number of devolved parliaments, including the Basque and Catalan parliaments, and soon we're going to try and establish a meeting with the Flemish Parliament and our Scottish colleagues to join us in this work of engaging with devolved parliaments and assemblies in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Alec. Alex Abel, MP. And Alec, of course, is the chair of the International Parliamentarians for West Papua. Now, there aren't a lot of us here, sadly. And I've got to leave very soon because there's going to be a vote downstairs at 2 o'clock. However, Sir Paul Sweeney, MP, MSP, has just come in. Paul, do you have anything quickly you want to say?
Just to say welcome to the Scottish Parliament, and it's great to join you today, Bill and colleague Alex as well, to build capacity in this really worthy cause. There's a huge long-standing campaign going to the whole part of the parliamentary group, and it's good to be able to extend this to the Scottish Parliament. So, just here to add a noble support for the efforts.
Thank you. Yes?
I just want to thank Paul, because when he was in the Westminster Parliament, he was a member of the Parliament of West Papua, and it's great that he can join this new Scottish Friends West Papua group and carry on the long-standing support he's given to the cause of human rights in West Papua. So thank you, Paul.
No, thank you for that. And all you can see at the moment is, yes, I'm certainly very happy to follow up on what you said. If you can maybe send us an email with those items on it, itemised requests, and what we can follow up with. We'll try and do that. We'll speak to other colleagues across the Parliament and get as many as we can to actually be supported. And I'm sure that we'll be able to do that cross-party. And just to listen to all of what's been said in terms of what has happened to the people, the West Papuan people, at the hands of the government of Indonesia, successive governments of Indonesia, and it's disgusting and disgraceful, and the world, I think, is unaware of most of what's taking place, which shouldn't be, but I think it's incumbent on all of us to stand together and raise this and embarrass, if they can be embarrassed, these people in Indonesia and get countries across the world to stand together against this behaviour and get the United Nations access to this area. I think it's incredibly important. I'm really sorry about the throat being clean and that sort of thing, but all I can say is that Benny, thank you so much for being here. It's really kind of you and your family
obviously, so they've got a bit more foreign clout, etc. And I'm thinking of the issue of like things like, so if these people don't comply with maybe what the UK government is maybe calling for to happen, plus the UN, etc., is there an issue, is there a possibility of like looking at sanctions or that type of thing? Because just looking at that issue there, I'm looking here and I'm seeing that, so the trade is like roughly $1.5 billion with Indonesia, that's imports from Indonesia, and the vast majority of that, bizarrely enough, is like shoes and clothes. And then I've found in the last few years some of the best campaigns in the world to get people to actually set up and notice is when you hit like Primark or you hit like these people who are maybe manufacturing in Indonesia, and if people are not going to buy their clothes, then A, they quickly either do something about it, there's a lot of international pressure put on them, but virally through social media and stuff like that, it's just insane the amount of people that would get on board with something like that. So that's our observation, I suppose, and then maybe the question about the sanctions regime out there.
Yeah, can I answer to that recording? Can I answer to that recording this? Yeah, okay. So, one of the things, if the EU are currently negotiating a trade deal with Indonesia. They're in the 14th round, I think, of negotiations. The EU have got quite clear guidelines on human rights when negotiating trade deals. So we're putting pressure on the EU through Carlos Puigdemont to Borrell. That's in the public domain. But the reason we want to go to the Flemish Parliament, I want support, from the Scottish Party to go to the Flemish Parliament, is the Flemish Parliament, like the Wallonian Parliament in Brussels, has to vote on trade deals.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if we get the Flemish Parliament to agree that without this visit, they will not vote for the EU-Indonesia trade deal, then the EU-Indonesia trade deal will be finished. And that is a massive issue for Indonesia, probably bigger than allowing the UN to go.
Yeah.
So that's where the leverage comes in. In terms of sanctions, so I've been recently successful in lobbying the UK government to sanction the Speaker of the Ugandan Parliament for corruption to former Ugandan ministers. And again, the UK government sanctioned 5 Israeli settlers in the West Bank for destruction of Palestinian villages. So we're looking at deforestation. It's not just in West Papua. There are very widespread human rights abuses. I just met with people from indigenous people from Sulawesi in Indonesia. It's quite widespread actually across Indonesia. We can look, and there are British companies who are involved, British companies who own land as well. So we are going to try and put pressure on that. But if we can find examples where there is corruption, which I'm sure there will be in Indonesia, we can pressure the UK government to sanction individual politicians, which actually is the best, that gives the most pressure. So we are looking for opportunities where we can put pressure on British companies. We're also, very involved in the campaign around ecocide. The Green State vision is very strong on ecocide, and we need to implement that in UK law as well. So all of these things will all sit together.
Thank you so much.
Right, I'm actually going to have to go.
Yeah.
Paul would like to just join in the back of you, but I'm going to have to leave. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And thank you to everyone. Thanks.
Just a quick point to note that my colleague Monica Lennon is introducing a member's bill on ecocide, so that might be an element to consider there as well. I'd like to meet with her. We've got really good wording now in the IPU on ecocide, which was guided through by myself and Leslie Veselenko from Ukraine. So, and the Indonesian government didn't object, they didn't know it was about them.
Monica's next door with the CPT of the structure to one for later.
You mentioned that there was a World Council of Churches visit. Are there any kind of lessons from that are helpful?
We've had, I think both myself and Benny have had a number of meetings with Peter Prove, the World Council of Churches. I met him actually when I was in Geneva a couple of months ago when I went to the UNHRC. And there are quite a lot of lessons. One of their main issues, which is why I went to see Nazila Ganea, who's the UN Human Rights Rapporteur on freedom of religious belief, is there is a crackdown on the practice of Christianity in West Papua. So Indonesia Indonesia is a majority Muslim country, but West Papua is a majority Christian area. So, and there have been, as I said, although not recently, not this year, but there have in previous years been the killing of clerics, and that is a real concern. World Council churches, and that they operate through the Pacific Council churches. They operate on the ground. So the best form of intelligence we have really is from the Pacific Council churches, World Council churches to us, apart from the ULMWP. And that no offence to the ULMWP, the Council Church seems a more independent body, so it's easier to utilise their evidence.
Well, sorry, Paul, yes, no, thank you. So we didn't quite have time today either
Can we get my bag in a bit?
to watch the little presentation, etc. that we had planned. But what we're going to do is forward you on the presentation from today, and then I'll put that out to yourselves, obviously, and also all the members of Scottish Parliament, just saying this is what happened at the event, and inviting you also to watch the slideshow. And then another idea we had was, once we're back with wherever we are, a little individualised letter that we can work on together, and then we can print it off here and distribute it to all members, say, you were here, and this is what we did, this is what we're calling for, and with some more information, how they can then get in contact person, because obviously, as we all know, the last few weeks up here has been very busy.
It'd be great for some across the depth.
Exactly. Yeah. So we say please send that. We'll put it out in front of the ad in the letter form, so the link to the site will be easier for them.
I know there's some colleagues Westminster Declaration might not be. The Brussels might be easier.
I think it was just before wasn't it? It was Aaron Campbell, it was Jamie Edinburgh, Bill, and William Maniani. So yeah, good if Jamie could maybe do it again. I don't know if Bill mentioned he had gone to speak to Andy Robertson, who is our Constitution Stroke Foreign Affairs Minister, but it's just been one of those days, obviously, with all the new cabinet and stuff like that.
It's a historic day.
And that's they're always wanting to do, But no, thank you so much for coming, and don't go straight back down to Oxford, obviously you need to go for a little walk around to Edinburgh before you drive back down.